Welcome everybody to the final COVID economy broadcast for semester. My name is Dr. Jason Choo, the chairperson, and we have a very special topic for you today, graduate recruitment in the COVID economy. And I just realized that my screen is minimalized, pardon me for a second. So today we're very fortunate to be joined by three panelists from industry. We have firstly Sarah McGlade from National Australia Bank. Hi Sarah, how's it going?
Good, thanks Jason. How are you?
Good, good. So Sarah's the graduate recruitment manager for NAB. Sarah, could you tell us a little bit more about what you do and what your role is in the bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently responsible for the strategy for NAB's early career talent strategy. So that involves everything from our summer intern program through to our graduate program, from recruitment, attraction, on-campus activities, induction, rotations, development, and then eventually roll off.
Great, thanks for that. So Sarah, our topic today is really about how graduate recruitment is changing in the COVID economy, and we're going to get into it in a very significant way shortly. But just broadly, would you have anything to say to students with regards to how NAB is changing or will be changing its graduate recruitment policy?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So luckily for NAB, we've just finished our 2021 graduate recruitment, and that was Thursday last week we held our final assessment centre. So we open up our applications in February to March and then have about a 3-month process where our candidates move through various stages of the application process. And very early on, once COVID hit, we realised that with our assessment centre, we could no longer invite hundreds of students onto our premises and give them tours of their building and have them work in group activities. So we had to pivot our thinking and move towards delivering a fully virtual assessment centre. And as I said, we delivered our last one on Thursday, and we were so impressed by the agility of the students in not only using the technology and being really comfortable with the technology, but we were also really impressed with our assessors and how they were also able to interact with our students. And so now it's starting to get us to think about how should we potentially use this technology in the future, and how could some of the changes that we made perhaps be of benefit in future recruitment processes.
Great, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for that. Next, I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Alex Tyrrell. Alex is from GradConnect. Hi, Alex.
Hello, Jason. How are you?
Good, good, thanks. Perhaps you could share with students what your role is in GradConnect and what it does, if students aren't familiar.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully students have heard of GradConnect. We're basically a one-stop shop for all of the graduate and internship, clerkship sort of roles. We work with around 370 odd of Australia's largest graduate and internship employers. And basically the role of the website is to put all of the jobs in one place to make it a little bit easier for all students to be able to find when jobs are opening and closing for applications. We work with everyone from accounting firms to banks, engineering firms, tech companies, healthcare providers, government agencies. Most people that would hire a graduate would come and promote their graduate programs on the site. And my role is to look after a lot of the the employers that are on the site. So I have around 100 employers that I look after personally, and basically help them promote their graduate programs and campaigns and put roles up on the site, and then those roles get sent out to students when they're opening and then within about 48 hours of closing as well. So basically what I've seen as far as what's happening in graduate land is that most of my employers, the vast majority, have been going ahead with their application campaigns and still have a big focus on graduates. I think of my 100 clients, I've had 2 that have said that they're not going ahead, and they're in the very highly affected industries. and then a couple that have pushed back their programs to sort of later in the year. But the majority are going ahead, and sort of like what Sarah said, they've had to change their processes as far as how they're working with students and assessing students through their application and assessment processes, but the vast majority going ahead. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding.
Thanks. I think lots of students will be very, very happy to hear that, you know, with all the doom and gloom that's on the news, lots of students are sort of would be quite pleased to hear that so many employers, particularly when you look at a larger sample, that Alex, you're looking at, are saying that, yeah, they will be going ahead with some form of graduate recruitment in one way or another. Our final panelist today is a previous panelist who's come on before. We have Vince Lau joining us. So Vince is a Monash alumni. He did banking, he did the Bachelor of Commerce and has gone now on to work at NAB. And so Vince, perhaps you could share your graduate story with us in terms of what you did at Monash, how you found the graduate recruitment process at NAB, and a little bit about your story as to how you've progressed on through the ranks, because you seem to have taken on quite a number of roles since you graduated.
So my graduate story or thing is probably a bit different to others. NAB is actually my second graduate program that I've actually been a part. So as you mentioned, I did a Bachelor of Commerce, I did accounting. So I went to an accounting firm as a graduate. I lasted 4 weeks and then I resigned mainly because I didn't like the life of an accountant. I perhaps enjoyed teaching it and also studying it, but working as an accountant was probably not something that I really wanted to do. And I went back and got an honours and then a master's degree. So I then signed up for the graduate program at NAB, and fortunately I got in, and I haven't looked back since. So I signed up as a business and private graduate at NAB. I worked as a frontline banker for about 6 months. Even though I realised that it was not something I enjoyed doing, I learned a lot from it. And then I moved on into a few other back office roles, such as insights reporting and analysis. And then I moved into enablement team, and now I'm currently working in the pricing strategy team for home loans. So I've moved around a lot, probably in the last 3 years at NAB, but I haven't looked back since I've left Monash and started working at NAB.
Great. So just to as in a nutshell, throughout your graduate journey, what would you recommend to students in terms of a key critical skill that you think is important, particularly to you in this time of great change and great uncertainty? And what would you recommend to students to build a skill to build so that they succeed in graduate roles?
Believe it or not, Excel. You won't believe how many people don't have very strong Excel skills. You know, I would advise everyone to learn how to use it well and learn how to use it properly. The common thing that I've always seen is instead of using an equal sum function, people just manually add like 10 or 15 things individually, which is very inefficient. So, you know, if for those that are listening, I'd probably advise learn how to use Excel very well and properly. And if possible, even go on to LinkedIn Learning or even go on YouTube and learn how to use different programming languages such as R or Python or SQL, that sort of thing. Mainly because from the last 2 years, I've seen a major transition, particularly in NAB, where we don't want to be using Excel as much anymore. We want to be using more of these programming languages because there's so much data available in the banking landscape now, and just using Excel is not plausible. So if anyone does listen and wants to listen, I advise you to perhaps upgrade your skills or technological skills. But otherwise, you know, there are different roles within the bank or any business. So sometimes some roles require extensive Excel skills, others might not.
Great, thanks for that, Vince. And before we go to our first student question, I'd like to touch on back to our two other industry panelists. Sarah, just a broad question. Has there been any reduction in the number of graduates that NAB is looking for? next year and possibly moving forward? Does that look to be the case?
There hasn't been a reduction due to COVID-19. There has been a slight reduction due to the organisational transformation that we're going through. And certainly we're rethinking about what the future of banking looks like and where we need to tilt in to service our customers. So there has been a reduction in graduates from some streams, which are, where we don't believe is that future fit anymore. So to pick up on Vince's point in regards to Excel, so certainly when we recruit graduates for our business, it's part of our talent strategy. Absolutely, it is a pipeline of future leaders within our business, but we're looking at individuals who will come into our business with those future capabilities that they both inherently have and that we can build to add to our organisation to take it forward. And so, we're seeing the banking is changing. The way customers want to bank and have their services is different. And certainly, with COVID-19, we saw, an increase of 200,000 customer calls within a fortnight, 80,000 requests for loan repayment holds, increasing of chatbots, etc. And we're now starting to see that actually going forward, people don't want to hold money anymore. People don't want to use checks. So how do we make our business more agile, more digitally focused? And our graduates are part of that journey. And so that's tapping into Vince's skill around Excel and coding and Python. And so we want to make sure that absolutely we're recruiting graduates for that journey. So we've had a reduction in probably your more standard styles of banking, but we've increased our graduate numbers in digital, analytics, technology, and relationship banking areas.
Great. So because this nice introduction really will set the scene and expectations and theme for our discussion today, at the end of our broadcast, I'll be asking all the panelists, what do you think are 3 top skills that you recommend graduates have? And of course, that can be shaped by the discussion that we have today. And one of the distinctions that Monash University offers is actually a very broad and flexible degree program where students can actually do double majors. We have so many students doing double degrees, which is very common. And maybe even some students who are graduating who may be looking at a master's degree. A good sort of question, and a question they always ask us is, what sort of master's should I do to help prepare me for the future economy? So I'll sort of put that on the shelf for the time being, and we'll answer and direct these questions back towards the end of the broadcast. So before we go to our first student question, Alex, so across the broad spectrum of the 100 employers that you've seen and based on your understanding, would you be able to quantify approximately the fall in graduate places which are being offered? Is that possible?
Yeah, I can actually.
Oh, great.
I can give you a rough understanding. So we did a bit of a survey of all of our clients, of which there's, I think, 372 or something like that do profiles with us, and then there's a bunch of others that just do job ads. And I can give you the running numbers so far as who's increased and decreased. We haven't got all of the responses back, so there's a little caveat on this. But we've seen around just under 60% aren't changing their numbers at all. It hasn't been affected. About 6% have increased their numbers. So half of those, so 3%, have done that as a result of COVID. And I think those industries are often those that are associated with economic downturns. So things like insolvency and restructuring style graduate programs. And then about 38% have decreased the numbers of actual graduates coming into their programs, but are still running their programs. We've only had around 2% that have cancelled programs altogether. And as I said before, that's very much based on those that have been adversely affected by the COVID economy. So things like tourism and those sorts of things, airlines, those sorts of things that have obviously had a really tough time through this. So, and then there's a bunch of employers as well that are still trying to work out what their numbers are going to look like and what their programs are going to look like. And I think what we'll see is that there'll be quite a lot of people coming into the market for graduates in the back half of the year as well, when they've got a little bit more certainty around what the numbers can look like and what the workflow and workload is going to look like for the next 12 to 18 months.
Great, Sarah. And I mean, we've got such a good panel today because we've got a very company-specific viewpoint that Sarah provides from NAB, but we've also got a very nice systemic viewpoint that Alex provides. And also, Alex, in the same sense that when we approach the end of our broadcast, I'll sort of also be asking you from a that broad systemic perspective, what are sort of the three top skills that you see the system of graduate employers looking for? Is there something that you'd be able to recommend on that systemic scale to our graduates? So I think we're ready now for our very first student question. We've got a student, Jill, which would like to deliver a question to the panel. Over to you, Jill.
Hi, my question is that as mostly firms require applicants to hold citizenship or permanent residency, getting an internship or graduate opportunity can be challenging for international students. So are there any tips that the panelists can provide to international students who are looking for jobs in the Australian workplace? Thank you.
Great. Who would like to start? Anybody?
I can start if you'd like, Jason. So yes, at NAB, in order to apply for our graduate and internship program, you need to have permanent residency or be a resident of Australia and New Zealand. But I know that there are quite a number of organisations out there that do take international students, and certainly, there's quite some large ones. So I'd suggest to really, utilise programs like GradConnect, Grad Australia, other avenues where these roles are advertised, and really hone in for those organisations that do take international students. The other bit is certainly at our organisation, we value students who have work experience no matter where it is. So if you're eventually looking for a career in banking and finance, we value all work experience. So an individual who has experience in retail or hospitality, McDonald's or Coles, etc., that still adds significant value to your resume for when you are able to apply for those particular roles. Also, think about experience that you can get on campus via committees, mentoring, other bits and pieces. There's quite a few other things that you can do to kind of build out that resume to show that you've got the skills and experience, so that when you are ready for the role, you can show what you can do.
And just to touch on a couple of those points, Sarah, just had a conversation with a couple of international students, and very interestingly enough, some of the international students nowadays are doing sort of twinning programs where they've already done a degree in China or in America or in Mexico or whatnot, whichever country they're coming from. And they might have done a degree already, or they're coming as part of a twinning program. And some of them are coming in with actually internship experience from financial institutions in their home countries. I think in this period of time where there's been a bit of dislocation and international students may be sort of caught a bit back as to what am I going to do? I may be caught sort of in limbo for a little bit. Some of them were actually seeking internships and attempting to use that to try and further expand upon their experience. And another international student was actually taking translation courses to strengthen their bilingual skills. Sarah, let me just ask you, do you think that NAB really sort of pays particular attention to this sort of international internship experience, and does NAB also particularly look for students with very strong bilingual skills as well too? Is that an important feature for NAB to consider?
So we certainly look at all experience of our candidates, and that really is very valuable as our candidates move through the recruitment process. And whether that's for a graduate role, internship role, or just general employment at NAB, having that kind of robust experience really sets you up and sets you apart from other candidates when you have your interview. If there are assessment centres and you have to work on group activities, and you really bring that outside in thinking. Certainly bilingual skills, absolutely, we value bilingual skills. We have customers who are represented from all walks of life. We have a retail and business and banking footprint that reaches all across Australia. Our customers, are all from various different cultures and are bilingual themselves. And so for us to have individuals who represent our customers is highly valuable.
Great. Thanks for that, Sarah. Let's now go to Alex. Alex, I hope you remember the question.
I do remember the question. That's all good. And thank you. It is actually a really good question, and it is one that we do get quite a lot. And, as Sarah said, we do have quite a lot of employers that we work with that do take international student applications. And I do understand it can be really challenging, because where there are some employers that do take applications from student visa and working visa, those sorts of things, there's equally quite a lot that don't. So I guess from our side, it's worthwhile just checking you can actually go through and see what work rights are required for each role, and you can sort of work out which roles that you can and can't apply for. The thing that I would probably say as well is to not be too single-minded as to what programs you want to get into, because there is a lot of, as Sarah said, a lot of work experience that, would be favourably looked upon later on, in your career. So consider not just the big employers, but also some of the smaller ones that might sort of not be as strict with residency or citizenship. And you can find them both on our site, but also we're owned by SEEK, and SEEK has a lot of other roles as well. If you think about the number of students versus the number of graduate roles, they are very competitive, and it can be, there is a lot of disappointment that can go along with, regardless of if it's COVID or, if it's any other time frame. It's worthwhile, I guess, keeping your head up, even though there might be some disappointment along there, and really sort of continuing to apply and not getting despondent, and then not allowing an experience that you might have had where you have been disappointed to then colour how you present yourself to the next employer. Or to the next interview that you might go to, because I have seen that happen a little bit, and that's for all students, not necessarily those with work rights that aren't allowing them to apply. So I guess that's I don't know how much that really helps and how much that really answers the question, but there is certainly roles on our site for that are open to international students and those that don't have residency or citizenship. So definitely keep an eye out for those.
Great, thanks, Alex. And just to follow up a little bit more about that, so as to give international students a perspective as to the proportion of graduate opportunities, internship opportunities that are open to them, what percentage do you think of your customers would be offering internship or graduate opportunities to international students? Would you be able to approximate?
Jason, that's a really hard one. Because it's not a question that I particularly ask them. It does involve having to be put on our site with those. So proportion wise, and it does change all the time as to whether they are or aren't. So I would hate to give the wrong information, but I know
we'd say that it'll be the minority rather than the majority of
look, if I'm completely honest, it probably, for the larger employers, it is probably it's not the majority.
Yeah, no worries.
So
thanks. Let's go on to Vince now. Vince, Any sort of tips for international students, in your opinion, based on your experience?
So going with what Sarah and Alex said, realistically, sometimes you can't just say that you want to work for company A and expect to get to be employed by them straight out of uni. For example, I wanted to work in pricing, but that took me about 3 years from started at NAB to get into pricing. And even before then, when I was in uni, I was finding any job that I could take to get some type of experience. I worked as a toilet cleaner for about 2 years. I had a master's degree, but I was making burgers and frying French fries for about 1.5 years on a Saturday and Sunday. So for my view is, any experience you can get, whether how menial you may feel it may be, you actually get some type of skill from it. And I think, I learned how to deal with customers a certain way when I was making burgers. I learned how to deal with difficult things when I was cleaning toilets. When I was teaching at uni, I learned how to communicate, how to express myself. So, find any opportunity you can get, like Sarah said, whether it be on a committee at uni or volunteer work, or even just something that you created, which shows entrepreneurship. That is something different that other people may not have. So, don't think just because I couldn't get into, NAB or KPMG or some very big company, it's not the end of the world. It took me a while to find a job that I liked, and I'm happy. But, it took a while to do it. But don't feel sad or upset that you can't get it straight out of uni, because, as Alex said, there's probably thousands of students looking for work as soon as they graduate, but there's only a few hundred positions available. So, there's never a straight line for your professional career. It always, perhaps 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Vince. I think that's a very interesting perspective. I didn't know you worked as a toilet cleaner. I didn't see that on your CV when you applied to be a tutor in my unit. So good to know.
I didn't get paid for a family job, so but I still had to do it.
Yeah. And I think that casts the discussion in a very broad light. Thanks, everybody. We have our next question, which I'll deliver on behalf of the student. It's a very precise one. To the panelists, what do you think is the most important quality of a successful candidate? So it's just one most important quality for a candidate. And after we've all answered and had a bit of a chance to talk about why you think this quality is the most important, there's a follow-up question after that. So perhaps we'll start back with Vince. Vince, what do you think is the most important quality for a successful graduate recruitment candidate?
I sort of would say 2 different things. One would be, do they try? And 2 would be reliability. Having worked in NAB and also other organizations, there are some times that you work with really good people, but they're unable to meet deadlines, they're not reliable. And then there are other people who don't try as hard, but expect other people to do that sort, to pick up the slack. So I feel that if you're the type of person who is always dependable, reliable, no matter where you go, you'll be very successful. And if you're the type of person that shows initiatives, that always tries, even if you don't understand a question, the fact that you're willing to perhaps go ask someone, go online where everything's available. I mean, I remember when I first started at NAB, the amount of times I had to go on Google to search how to do this, what does this mean, that sort of thing. I mean, it sounds stupid now, having to Google something as simple as how does LVR work? I found that was a bit weird. I worked at a bank. I didn't know what LVR was, but, you learn from these things, and, you don't want to be the type of person who just says, because I don't know, I didn't do it. You want to be the person who said, it's okay that I don't know. I'm willing to find out. And if I really don't know after trying my best to figure out the answer, I'll ask you, and hopefully you can educate me so that I can then complete my job or complete the task. But I feel that those 2 are combined, and you need to be able to be both in order to succeed, whether it be in life or in your job or anything that you ever try.
Great. So to summarize, that would be reliability and that self-sufficiency of finding out what you don't know for yourself and making that inquiry and asking people for help. Thanks. Alex, what do you think is the most important quality? A really tough one.
It's such a tough one.
But, it also could be from a very personal perspective, the most important quality you think the candidate should have.
For sure. And Vince's answers were phenomenal. So if you had either of those things, you'd be very well placed. I think I'm going to sneak in two if I can. And given that we deal with students at the very front end of the process, I guess, you know, giving a true representation of yourself in the interview process, I think is very important, because there's no point selling yourself as one thing and then you'll get found out very, very quickly in the workplace if you have sold a dream that you can't deliver on. And also, you know, using the interview process, and when you're, you know, making your first representation of yourself to the organisation, it's not just them that's assessing you, it's you assessing them. And if you're not presenting your true self to that organisation, and then, you know, making a decision based on whether that's the place for you, then you're not really doing yourself a good service either. And I guess the second one, and sorry to sneak another one in, but the thing that I hear from the majority of our employers is resilience. And I know it sounds like a bit of a buzzword, but there will be a lot of knockbacks and a lot of, not necessarily knockbacks, but things that will change when you don't expect them to. Companies go through restructures really constantly. I mean, my last company, I was there for 10 years. I went through 4 restructures in that time, 5 if you count the one that I came in on. So the ability to, you know, be positive with that and then be able to bounce back from any of that adversity is super important, and something that, you know, if anything has come out of COVID, I think that's one of the big things that we've all had to really rely on, and make a real effort to I guess put our, you know, come back from this crazy time that we've been in to still be able to hire graduates and go through programs and do our exams, you know, if you're at uni, those sorts of things. So for me, it's be true to yourself and resilience.
Wonderful, Alex. So to summarize, it's sincerity, being sincere, and showing your sincere self, and having resilience. And I find that particularly pertinent because I enjoy reading as much as I can about how students are being affected by this whole crisis. And there was a recent article in the ABC which interviewed students, and particularly graduate students graduating, and I heard a lot of dismay with students saying that this is not fair, this is not fair, this is not fair. So what I would get from your response is that developing that resilience, and where students can actually say that this is not fair, but at the same time, how do I deal with this and how do I move forward? I think it's one of the very big growth evolutions where, you know, students at university then become working adults. I think that's a very important stage of growth for them to go through. Last but not least, Sarah, you got a bit of a tough job, I think. Alex and Vince have mentioned some really outstanding points of note, but to you perhaps personally, what do you think is the most important skill a candidate should have?
And it's so challenging to choose just one skill. So I'm wondering if I can sneak in a second like Alex.
Of course.
So for me, it's not so much a skill or a capability, but it's about having a passion for the organisation that you're applying for the role that you'll be doing, for the industry that you'll be in, and a passion for your career. And I think if you have that passion, it means that you're willing to you know, go through the trials and tribulations. You're willing to, a bit like Vince, take a divergent here and there in order to get to the career that you want. You're willing to put in the hard yards because you've got that motivation to get there. And certainly with our graduate program, we receive in excess of 6,000 applications for on average 100 roles. And so to get, you know, from 6,000 to 100, it's very clear throughout our recruitment process, those individuals who have that passion, who demonstrate throughout the process that they want to be part of our organisation, that they want to be working with our customers, they want to be in our technology team or whichever it is. It really comes through and it highlights the candidates at the end of the process. Having that passion, they can really demonstrate why they want to be there, and they bring in that thinking into the assessment centre process. So I think that's probably key for me. And if I sneak in a second one, a little bit like what you mentioned, Jason, probably around that growth mindset, is just, you know, not being stuck in the past, not thinking about why me, but actually looking at everything as an opportunity. How can I learn from it? How can this help me in the future? How can I think differently? And having that, you know, passion, positivity, growth mindset can actually get you a long way in an organisation.
Thanks so much for that, Sarah. And I really believe that what you mentioned, passion, is so important. And you know, that's my experience as well too. I was an old student of Monash University. I did banking and finance at Caulfield a long time ago in a galaxy far away. I went to industry to work for a number of years, but ultimately ended up in academia, and I've been here for 15 years. I don't feel tired at all, and you know, education is my passion. I think that there's certain sort of ideas and a certain sort of mentality when you realize your passion. So one of them would be a quote by a famous ethnographer, Simon Sinek, who says, if you can see your job as a reflection of who you are and what you believe in, then you found your passion, as opposed to people just doing a job for the purposes of just doing the job. And finally, to put a pin in that wonderful sort of summary of excellent skills, passion, resilience, and whatnot, I think also self-awareness and the ability to self-reflect, to look in and say, well, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How can I build a more constructive attitude? That ability to build self-awareness, I think, fits very wonderfully as icing on the cake to really help build on all those skills that our panelists have talked about. Wonderful question. I really appreciate the student who asked it. I don't know the student who did, but I was very happy to deliver that on your behalf. And we'll now move to another very interesting student question. It's actually very specific, and it's a very interesting one. And the question is, I am a volunteer in Marine Search and Rescue and the CFA. Do employers like people that have these volunteer roles, or do you think that it's stronger to be volunteering for university societies such as business societies, commerce societies? And if I may add another level to sort of make more distinction between that, do you think that volunteering in these two different areas, it sort of highlights and shows different sort of skills, or presents a different part of character? So how about we start off with Sarah?
From my opinion, I value all volunteering, regardless as to what it is. And what volunteering actually highlights to an employer is that you're able to, you know, work in a team, you're able to communicate, you're able to deliver, you're stepping outside of your day-to-day activities and, you know, your job and your university requirements, and actually giving back to the community and being part of achieving something wonderful. So I don't actually value one over the other. I actually think both are very valuable and both bring a specific experience and skill set. Probably what's more important is how you communicate that volunteer experience to your employer, how you communicate that in the recruitment process. So really tapping into what it is that you do in that role, how you deliver, how you work with others, how you achieve goals. That is important to bring that through in the recruitment process.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Alex, what do you think? Do you have an opinion, one or the other, or do you think they provide a different? Do you think they provide different viewpoints as to different qualities that students have?
So, firstly, it's a great question, and secondly, well done on volunteering for both those organisations. Very worthy organisations to volunteer for. I do surf lifesaving, and so that is something that, you know, working in a volunteer organisation teaches you some unbelievable skills. And, you know, I guess in some ways, being in one of those large volunteer organisations does give you access to some different types of people that perhaps a university society might not in some ways. So, for example, if you're in a large volunteer organisation, you'll be dealing with people from all different age groups and all different backgrounds, and you're also, you know, particularly if you're in a leadership role or something within that organisation, you are having to motivate people to be to do work when there's no monetary incentive for them to do it. So you have to find a really interesting way of getting people motivated, and volunteer organisations, both those large ones that you were sort of talking about that you were part of, but also your university societies, is that can be a real challenge. And if you can manage to do that, particularly if you're in a leadership role or even if you're working in a team environment, then that's an amazing skill to be able to showcase. And I absolutely agree with what Sarah said around, you know, how are you then communicating that, and how are you going to put that forward in the interview process? And then, but also not just in the interview process. I mean, that's an amazing skill that you can take into your first and ongoing career roles as well. And the fact that you've been able to manage your time and give your time selflessly is something that's definitely going to put you forward in a great light for an employer. So, and I know a lot of the employers that I work with really look at those sorts of things really favourably. And, you know, one over the other, I'm not sure that there's either that's particularly sort of more like well thought of than the other. I just think that you do get kind of different skills from each, and you've got to like be able to sort of tell the story about what your involvement has been and really personalise that, and seek out those opportunities as well, particularly if there is a leadership opportunity within either of those volunteer organisations that will sort of take you to the next level, I guess.
And Jason, what an amazing story to tell about, you know, being volunteering for the CFA. We've recently had, you know, the bushfires ripped through Australia, and that, you know, called on a whole bunch of resilience and leadership there. You know, just an amazing opportunity for that individual. And if they can just communicate that and showcase that, exactly what Alex said, yes, in the interview process, but also on the job, wow, what an amazing skill set that they can bring to any organisation.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. And I really like, I think the contribution that both Sarah and Alex have provided is really so insightful, because from that not only you are doing this, but your ability to communicate it, I think is something key, in that I'll circle back to it and touch on a little bit more as to how at university we're trying to help our students build those communication vehicles and articulation to be able to most effectively showcase what they've done. But also in the sense of, Alex, you mentioned, I think you touched on something really important. Working in volunteer organizations outside of university really opens the horizon as to many, many different types of people that you'd interact with that you'd never meet at university. So they're very, very different styles and different environments of exposure. And you know, I think that these are really important points, wonderful points that you've given to students. So let's move on to Vince finally. Vince, your thoughts?
So for me, I was extensively involved with university clubs and societies. I was involved with 3 or 4 of them. But basically, I don't see why one is better than the other. Coming from a NAB perspective, one of the consultants that I work with very closely in my new pricing team, he was a 2017 grad. He's actually a CFA, a volunteer firefighter, and he's also part of the Army Reserve as well. I talked to him quite a lot, and he says that NAB is very, very supportive of his volunteer programs, and anytime he needs to take leave for volunteer work, they've always been very supportive. His people leader, his manager, is very supportive of that as well. He was gone for about 2.5 months this year because of the fires. But, you know, during that time, he never felt worried about his work. He knew that he had a supportive team, a supportive employer. So, you know, I wouldn't say that one type of volunteer program or community program is better than the other. It's whatever suits you. You know, if you're suited to be, I think, was it in the Marines or the Army or the CFA, or whether it be a uni program, it doesn't really matter. You're doing something to expand your skills and horizon. You know, you've got different life stories to tell. So I think it's fine. I don't see a differentiation between either.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody. Again, a wonderful response from the panel. And just to mention a couple of other things and other observations. As I mentioned, at university, we're very interested to help students and help you be able to, number one, communicate what you've done effectively to employees and to other people. And just to give you an example, if you're looking for how you can communicate and articulate that. As you know, the COVID economy is run by business school broadcasting. Business school broadcasting is a unique staff-student club where students work with staff to actually put together programs exactly like the one that you're watching. And we've got a team of students currently doing audience management who are highlighting and spotlighting the different speakers as we talk. You've also got another team which is doing audience management as well too. And so these particular ways by which you can participate within clubs builds your leadership, your teamwork skills. But one very unique thing that we also want to promote in business school broadcasting, and I like to call it the crowning jewel, is something which is quite innovative, and I'd like to sort of ask our panelists what you think of it. So the typical application process is where you send in a cover letter, a CV, and you have academic references. But the new thing that we're doing in BSB is creating a video testimonial, a short 3-minute video where the student members of BSB speak about the different ways by which they've contributed to the club, the different things that they've learned. That's one part. Another part is peer reviews, where club members who they've worked with actually provide character references and reviews of what is it like to work with this student, for example, on the website design, on audience management. And the third section is actually staff reviews, because we've had the opportunity to work with students. We can provide a very direct and a very objective reference rather than have to craft something on pen and paper. And that would be coalesced and delivered compactly within a 3-minute testimonial video that students can link in with their cover letter or link into their resume. And I'd just like to briefly go through the panel. Sarah, do you see this happening with students where they're trying to be innovative and bring in video media to showcase themselves? Have you noticed this? And what do you think about such a video testimonial, in your opinion?
Thanks,
Sarah.
Jason. It's very innovative, and I haven't heard of it before, and I haven't seen them either. I will say, however, that our graduate recruitment process is probably quite traditional. And that first application stage, we actually don't even ask for a CV or cover letter. And so that first application stage is really where the students are filling in just some eligibility criteria, answering in 150 words or less why they want to join NAB's graduate program, and then they move to the next section of our recruitment process. So at that first stage, as I said, yes, we don't ask for cover letters, CVs, we don't even ask for WAM. It's just basically, you know, some quick criteria to move to the next section. The next section is a online assessment test where we have our psychometric testing and some situational judgment tests. The next stage is a video interview where we ask 3 behavioural event interview questions, which is really where your work experience and volunteer experience comes in as you answer those questions and demonstrate your skills and capabilities. And then the third stage is our assessment centre, which is where we have a group activity and another interview. And it would probably really be in that final section where we're meeting our candidates face-to-face or virtual to virtual these days, and asking questions about them and their experience today and why they want to join our organisation, and some behavioural event interview questions where they could tap into this process that you've described, Jason, and tell us about how their work has impacted others, how others see their work, what value have they contributed. And I think it's really that would be the place where they could tap in to all these different avenues of feedback, which demonstrates their skills and capabilities.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's very interesting to see, and I think it's students will be very interested to know how NAB actually rolls its graduate recruitment process forward. Thanks for that. Alex, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's great to be doing some innovative sort of things, and I think it actually sounds like a really good process to go through, whether it is specifically for your graduate recruitment, like for your resume or anything like that, or if it's just as practice. I think, to Sarah's point, there's quite a lot of employers that won't have a cover letter or a CV. They'll literally do a online application form that you'll have to fill in. And then there's other employers. So I know a lot of the banks, particularly the investment banks, do require a cover letter and those sorts of things. So, absolutely, yes, there is a place to put those, and putting a link to a YouTube, unlisted YouTube clip of that is a potential option. I guess one thing to be aware of in that is that, they are looking a lot of different cover letters and those sorts of things. So the ability to watch any more than a 1-minute video is probably not there at that point. So just to sort of bear that in mind, but absolutely take some of the learnings from doing that process into the interview process. I guess the second part to it is video interviews are really common across the board. So if there is the ability to do a bit of a practice session, which is almost what you're doing in what you were suggesting, Jason, then absolutely take that with both hands. And practice being in a video situation where you're not looking at a person and you maybe have a lot of text coming up on screen, and then you're having to answer a question, and viewing what you look like when you're answering those questions, and how you're using body language, and how you're, what your sort of filler words are. Mine might be or sort of, or whatever, and really understand that, and take that into your video interview process. And then the third part you were talking about was peer and staff review. Now, that's something that is quite commonplace in a lot of organisations, and a lot of organisations will call it something like a 360. So they might get a 360-degree view of you as a employee. Regardless of whether it's used in the interview process, it's a really useful thing to do, so you can understand things like self-awareness, which I know was mentioned a little bit earlier around key skills, but so you can understand how you're perceived by other people and potentially what they perceive your key skills as being. And then again, you can take that into the interview process, but also really understand who you are. And the last thing before I sort of go back to you, Jason, is to really think about how those might be able to be used. So yes, absolutely do it in a video testimonial or something like that, but most students should be thinking about having a LinkedIn profile. There is a recommendations tool on LinkedIn that you can use for those sorts of things. So what a great way of getting some great testimonials as to yourself, and put that in a public environment. So, consider using those sorts of things on your LinkedIn profile as a recommendation.
Wonderful suggestion. Thanks so much, Alex. Finally, Vince.
I think the videos are a good idea. However, I think, applying it to really big organizations, like banks or the accounting firms, those type of organizations, it might be quite difficult. I've got a few friends who work as recruiters, and usually when they're hiring for boutique firms or much smaller firms, they do like that innovative video thing where they don't have to be reading a CV for 2 or 3 pages long. They can just sit there and just skim through the video. So it is a good idea. It has its place, but if any of the students are planning to go work in a more traditional like investment banking where it's a CV and a 1-pager, or, working banking where, like as Sarah described, it's just application form, then do a psychometric testing and then a video interview, it doesn't really have its place. So I think depending on where the students want to be ending up for their career, it has its place. But if they're more wanting to go into a more mainstream role, such as investment banking, that sort of type of thing, it will probably be better used if you were to put it, as Alex said, on your LinkedIn account. And so it does have its place, but really, how is a student going to use it? So that's all I have to say. Great.
Thanks, Vince. Well, time flies. We're pretty much to the end of our broadcast, and it's been a fascinating, very stimulating discussion. The last sort of question that I'd like to circle back to is just to ask the panelists to summarize, and from your point of view, what is something personally you'd like to say to all our students watching? I think that a lot of them have been very fearful about the news and what they've seen, and what would be a personal message that you would like to communicate to them as someone in your role? Perhaps Sarah, start off with you.
I think probably the key message would be to just keep an open mind. And yes, we've gone through COVID-19. It's thrown up a few challenges for certain organisations. It's thrown up a few challenges for us as individuals as well. But I think if you keep an open mind and look at this next stage of your journey and realise that, potentially you did have your mind on option A, but maybe that's not there anymore, or that's changed, or timelines are different. So what is an option B or C that you still are passionate about, that will still get you up out of bed every day, that will still help you learn and build skills and capabilities and networks, and eventually, it will get you back to your option A. So just to be really open-minded and think about all the alternatives that are available for you. Employers value early career talent. They value graduates. Absolutely, it's part of our pipeline. And, most organisations do want to have graduates within their business. Timings have changed, situations have changed, but it will be there again. So just be open-minded and have perseverance in the process.
Thanks, Sarah. Alex?
I think for me, it's, don't buy into the fake news. There is a lot out there, and just, I guess, bearing in mind that not everything you're hearing in the media is 100% accurate, and to stay positive. I mean, there is plenty of opportunities out there. Year on year, we've seen just under a 10% increase in the number of campaigns on our site. So there is opportunities, and just sort of keep applying. And if it doesn't work out for you in one of the big programs, do think about what your other options are. There will be something out there, whether it's trying to upskill yourself by doing some additional study, or it might be, doing flipping burgers as Vince did, or it could be, doing something that's like going to increase your skills in one way or the other. Really staying positive and doing all of that. And I guess the biggest thing is, the digital literacy is just going to be something that is crucial in the workplace going forward. So, give everything a bit of a go. Have a go at Zoom, which you're doing now. Have a go at all at Microsoft Teams. Try out a few of these different things, and really just put your best foot forward. And lastly, just good luck with all of this process. It can be a bit daunting, but it's also really, really rewarding on the back end. So good luck to everybody.
Thanks, Alex. And as we started off in the very beginning, we put something on the shelf, which was Monash offers lots and lots of different flexibility in terms of its degree programs and whatnot. Even students can choose to, on the fly, change minors, majors, take on additional studies. So Alex, from your perspective, you mentioned digital literacy. Would there be any particular area of study that if a student is saying, well, what could I potentially study now to really make myself more relevant and align myself with the sort of requirements and skills that employers are seeking? Would you have a particular recommendation for students who are thinking of embarking on that extra or additional study?
Yes, I guess.
Yeah.
It's very personal to the student, I guess, as to where your passion and all that sort of thing lies. But I guess if I was to go back in time and consider what other skills I might have taken up, and the things that I'm really hearing that there's a crying need for from employers, it is technology skills. Whether that's, information systems, computer science, all those sorts of things, might be just information technology, or just the ability to use Excel particularly well, which is what Vince was sort of talking about. Those sorts of things are going to be crucial to the workplace. And if I look at year on year, the type of industries that are seeing more and more roles coming up for them and more students sort of required from employers, it is that technology space. So if there was something that if I had an 18-year-old son or daughter that was looking at what they were going to study at university, I would encourage them highly to do something technology-based to supplement what they might already be considering as well.
Great. And just to go back to Sarah for a moment, Sarah, is there any particular area, or do you agree, do you concur? Is there any particular field of study that you think would be particularly relevant given the changing needs of NAB moving on to the future?
I think Alex is absolutely spot on, and that's kind of one of the comments I've written here is as NAB moves forward and as the future of banking moves forward, what is going to rise to the top is that digital literacy that is going to support how we do business in the future. And I'd encourage students to, complement their studies by undertaking even self-learning opportunities on LinkedIn Learning, short courses, etc. But just to have that common language, just to understand what it is, and just to be able to, apply some of the foundations and principles on the job. In regards to specifics, it's actually quite broad. Again, it's computer science, information technology, a little bit of coding here, a little bit of software engineering, developing. You don't have to be a full-on technology boffin, because we have, technology experts and specialists and students who study technology who do that, but it's just having that basic common knowledge and foundation. So as we move forward, you're actually moving forward with the organisation and not being left behind.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Sarah. Last word to Vince.
So basically, I've got two, as I said, I did 2 graduate programs, and for me, when I was in my undergrad, I felt my self-worth was, once I graduated, I needed to find a job, and it had to be a job in like a well-respected company or a big company, that sort of thing. Otherwise, why did I spend 4 years in my degree? So, I didn't really I had a few options saying I want to do this, this, and this. So what I ended up doing was that in my final year of my undergraduate, I applied for 47 firms for graduate programs. Ended up getting about, I think, 12 interviews, and then I think 3 or 4 offers. Unfortunately, all of them were in accounting firms, so I took it up. I found out that I actually hated it. So my recommendation is actually find out what you really do like. Don't just apply for graduate positions just because you feel like you need a job. As Alex and Sarah said, you don't have to start off as a graduate. You can start off as, something else, whether it be an analyst or an associate, that sort of thing. You don't need to start off your career as a graduate. There are many people that I've met at NAB where as soon as they graduated from uni, they started in, the call center or started as a banker, that sort of thing. And they've now progressed up to, roles where they're GMs or whether they're directors, that sort of thing. So I don't think that it's, it's not a measure of your self-worth whether or not you can find a graduate program position. Just find a role that you feel like you can learn a lot from and that you're willing to go to work every day. Because I know that during those 4 weeks, I did not want to go to work. And it took a lot of guts for me to quit, especially telling my parents that. They were not very happy that I'd spent 4 years and couldn't even last 4 weeks in a role that apparently a lot of people wanted, but I absolutely hated. So that's just my view, but it could be wrong. You could do what I did and apply for 50-something firms. I still have that spreadsheet of all the companies and all the graduate programs, and you can do that, but I advise you not to.
So thanks, Vince. I find it, I really appreciate you sharing that sort of experience where you said you applied for 47 and you got 12 interviews, is that right?
Yep.
So basically, you in essence got a lot of rejections.
Yeah, I just did the maths. I mean, if you apply a lot of times, there has to be some type of, someone will contact you and hopefully you'll be successful. But again, just because you get a call back or get an offer doesn't mean that's what you want to be doing. 2013 March was when I applied for them. I'd started as an accountant or a graduate accountant in 2014, hated it. And it wasn't until 2018 that I started at NAB that I actually enjoyed it. That took 4 or 5 years. And during that time, I got 2 additional degrees, that sort of thing. So, as I said, don't use, whether or not you get into a good graduate program or your first job outside of uni as a measure of your success. It will take a while, at least it did for me, to find that I actually like my job and I actually want to go to work compared to, oh, crap, I've got it now. Get up, take the train and do something I really hate until 5 p.m. So I feel it's very important to find out what you like, what you don't like, and don't expect the first job you get to be the job that you absolutely love.
Wonderful. Well, that brings us to the end of the COVID economy for semester 2. Thank you, everybody, so much for participating. To our panelists who've given up their time and their effort to be here with us, we, on behalf of all the students and Monash University, thank you so much. You've been able to offer a very special, a very unique, a very, very helpful perspective for our students today. And on behalf of them, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for having us, Jason.
So as we wind down, everybody, the audience management team will deliver a poll to the student audience. There we go. It's up. Please feel free to fill that in. And if you've got any comments about our program, please feel free to email us at the bbiz@bsb email for the club. That email is actually in your registration email that you received when you got the Zoom link. And the COVID economy will be breaking, of course, for your exams. I wish you all the best of luck for your exams. And during the winter break, we'll be starting up again with a couple of special broadcasts before semester 2, we go back to our regular program. Thanks again, everybody, for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for our panelists, we'll be moving into a breakout area for a little bit of a discussion before we say farewell. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.